Hi, Marilena.
Catalyst 2030 started life as a WhatsApp group among social entrepreneurs, connecting to envision real transformational change. Launched at the World Economic Forum in January 2020, it's grown into a global movement accelerating change to ensure the SDGs are reached by 2030. Fueled by passion, our 550 members working in 175 countries have collectively put in an amazing 50,000 volunteer hours, touching the lives of 2 billion people. And we're driven by values, to which we hold ourselves accountable. 2020 was a busy year, co-creating 3 reports with partners and producing one of our own. Inviting high-level guests to participate in the Catalyzing Change campaign, hosting fireside chats and expert hours, which will be continuing in 2021. To celebrate our achievements, together we placed our supporters in the limelight with the first Catalyst 2030 Awards for Systemic Change. With the blessing of the Dalai Lama, we celebrated finalists and winners in the following categories: special recognition for our early supporters, individual philanthropists, donor organizations, philanthropic intermediaries, corporate organizations, bi- and multilateral organizations, and 4 regional winners in the category of national governments. And now on to Catalyzing Change Week 2021. During this social entrepreneur-led event, we bring together diverse stakeholders in over 100 sessions to showcase their systems change efforts and the best practices that can accelerate our work in pursuit of the SDGs.
So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the System Change Africa Moving Forward session. We are very happy to have you. Today, the session is going to be in English, but we will have the French translation. So down at the bottom of the screen on the right, you can see an icon with a globe. If you want to listen to this session in French, please select the French option. Otherwise, if you want to listen to the session in English, please select the English option. And now, please welcome Wamuyu, our first speaker.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Karibu sana, Africa chapter. We look forward to spending the next 1 hour with you. We want to understand systems change and looking at it from Africa. How are we moving forward? And I want to start by talking about what is systems change, because much as this is a very common concept, we talk about systems change, or next slide, please. Yet despite all the attention and a long tradition of academic study, the concept and its implications are still hard to grasp. One reason the concept is so challenging may be captured by the following well-known story that goes something like this. A fish is swimming along one day when another fish comes up and says, "Jumbo, how is the water?" And the first fish stares back blankly at the second fish and says, "What's water?" So the fish is asking, "What's water?" So you can understand the challenge, but also why Catalyst 2030, we are pursuing systems change, because the more we increasingly recognize the water we have been swimming in along, the more chances of making any lasting change. Next slide. So why are we addressing systems change now? Last night I attended another Catalyst session, and we listened to a poem by one of the ladies called Mickey Scottby. I don't know how many of you were in that session. And the poem is entitled Invitation to Brave Space. So the beginning of that poem went something like this. Together, we will create brave space. Because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we have all caused wounds. I won't read the whole poem, but the end of it says, we will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together. And we will work on it side by side. This slide indicates, this slide, on the impact of COVID-19. The pandemic has made the task of achieving the SDGs much, much harder. For those of you who've been looking at or keeping progress of the impact of the SDGs, the 2020 Social Progress Index has indicated that at the pace at which we are moving, we can only achieve these goals in 2082. And this has been confirmed by the World Bank forecast of June 2020 that has realized that the shrink in the economy, which is by 5 to 8%, is pushing 100 million people below the international extreme poverty. So what is happening now is interesting. Next slide. Next slide. Because in Africa, we are looking at the reality on the ground. Going by Mickey's poem that I talked to earlier, maybe this slide should have been reading from crisis to brave space. Because Mickey is talking about that space that's ours. And in our space, the reality on the ground is that we have food insecurity, issues of food security. We have youth unemployment in Africa. We have health issues, corruption, nepotism, tribalism. I mean, a lot is happening on this space. But we can work on it side by side. And that is why we're thinking systems change. Next slide. What we need is systems leadership. We need commitment. We need persons with commitment. We need leaders with ability to see reality. We need to build relationships. We need to be convinced that we can do something about the reality on the ground. Next slide. Currently, we have a number of systems leadership in practice. And I can give you an example of Ashoka Fellows because I'm one of them. And one thing I've noticed about Ashoka Fellows is that they do things differently. And they appear to be making an impact. I therefore embarked on a research 3 years ago of over 100 Ashoka Fellows in 19 countries in Africa. So I can say that in the last 3 years, I've been a scholar practitioner, and I have learned how systems leaders work with their teams and why they're successful. And I'm currently using the knowledge that I have learned from this to support other entrepreneurs through training and coaching so that they can bridge their skills gap to systems change. I can tell you for a fact that there could not have been a better way to earn a doctorate, because this is an area that I am totally passionate about and one where I can see change as we continue to work with each other and turn ourselves to systems leaders. I can give you an example of a few Ashoka Fellows that are making change in Africa. We have Megan Mokuria of Zana Africa, who is changing social norms by equipping adolescent girls with the tools they need to safely navigate puberty, step into their potential, while also leading global advocacy efforts to break the period taboo. Moka Latam of 2020 microclinics is changing practices in healthcare by going to the patients, thus eliminating barriers of distance to the clinics, cost of transport to the clinics, and also the challenge of knowing where the clinics are. And he's doing a lot of work online. I can also mention Farmer Tantu of Cameroon. Farmer Tantu is a young farmer, and in fact, his story is very interesting because he accepted to be a farmer when he was young, when farming was not sexy. And he said, this is what I need to do because I need to make a change in my community. And that he's currently building access to safe drinking water in African communities. And as a young farmer, he is a role model. He's helping young people change their mindsets. And currently, there's a book, a children's book, highlighting his efforts to grow an environmental movement in his home country. We have 100 such leadership systems leaders in Africa, but they are not enough. So we are calling on you, next slide, to join us as system leaders. We believe that we can do it. We can actually, side by side, work in our brave space, Africa, and make a change. So for the next few minutes, I'll first invite Luvuyo, Rani, to tell us a little about the Catalyst 2030 Africa chapter. And then after that, my colleagues will talk to us about the food security, health, and youth employment initiatives that we have in Africa that are working, so that you can begin to see where we are at, even as we have so many challenges that we hope to overcome in the near future. Thank you for listening to me. Over to you, Luvuyo.
Thank you so much, Wamuyu. I mean, really great. I mean, listening to you, and really, I mean, I was excited when it was like mentioned that Africa moving forward, and I think this is part of the session that today we're able to say by the end of this hour, we're able to talk about the systems change around that now. So my name is Luvuyo, I'm based in South Africa. I run Silulo. It is like social enterprise on the digital transformation now. I'm a chair of the Africa chapter with Ndidi. We've been, started last year, late last year, could be September, October, where we started, as an Africa chapter under Catalyst. And it's been an amazing journey in the last looking back, like 6 months in terms of what we able to come together and able to achieve in the last 6 months as part of the social entrepreneurs in Africa. And I think it's been so great to see African social entrepreneurs in Africa coming together. And we have established core groups, that we established that as part of the Catalyst, even today. And part of the session today, we are going to be hearing on the health. We also are going to be hearing on the food security, also be hearing on the youth and employment. And more than anything, it's just like looking forward to your engagement. We're looking forward for your kind of like questions, engagement. And I think that's probably what it's going to be much more interesting now. But for me, like say, please join this amazing movement, because we need everyone to be part of this amazing movement, because I see that there's kind of like, it's a time for Africa and no other time that like now for Africa now. So, that's kind of like where I say that welcome, feel part of it. And we are going to have this 3 presentation, but beyond that, we will make sure that we engage, and we make it a point that we have English and French. If you go on the interpretation, you could go and able to go and listen to the French language, where you could understand in terms of like what's like, because we want to make sure that we include everyone, we don't leave anyone, and we make sure that it be represented in Africa. So in nutshell, just to say, we welcome you, be free, engage, and by the time that we're done, I'm hoping that most will understand the system change and able to engage. And by beyond that, we need you. This is a movement that needs you more than anything. Thank you so much. And I think I'll probably ask, the first one, if I'm right, it's Ndidi to come in. And yeah.
Is Ndidi here?
No, I think I'm probably, yeah.
Apologies, I have to leave my video off because in transit, innovation space, Innocent Chukuma. He was the rep for Ford Foundation Office of West Africa, and his burial ceremony starts today. He actually started about 20 systems change projects around the world. Many of you might be aware of them. So I'd just like us to remember him today as a champion who continues to push for social innovation, and he's handed the baton to many of us. He was only 55. So I'm on the way to his funeral, so apologies for keeping my video up. But I wanted to just share 3 examples of systems change initiatives in the agriculture and food landscape. The first one is the Ethiopian Commodity Exchange. Many of you might have heard of the Ethiopian Commodity Exchange. It's an example for many Africans to emulate, because it started as an initiative from the government, the ATA that the Ethiopian government pushed, but also Eleni, who many of you might know, came back and helped start it, engaging the private sector, farmers, to ensure the transparency of the trade of coffee and other raw materials. Probably the most efficient commodity exchange right now in Africa, removing middlemen and key stakeholders and ensuring that farmers have access on a daily basis to national prices and global prices for their commodities. It also includes warehouse receipt systems so that they actually can benefit from financing across the ecosystem. And I'm proud of what they've been able to do, and this is being emulated in other African countries. The second example is Nourishing Africa, which is still a startup, but already proving to be catalytic. Nourishing Africa was conceived as a home for 1 million entrepreneurs that will transform the food and agricultural landscape in Africa, providing financing, data, linkages, training, mentoring, and support. And to date, we have 1,000 entrepreneurs from 34 African countries who are already connecting with funders, connecting with each other. And with the advent of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, we're excited to see how Nourishing Africa can truly connect entrepreneurs across Africa to trade with each other. Ifi Umona is a co-founder and a co-CEO of Nourishing Africa, and she's on this platform. And I'm so proud of what her and her team are doing. And thirdly is the Advancing Local Dairy Development in Nigeria project, which Sahel Consulting is leading, transforming the dairy sector in Nigeria. And it's funded by the Gates Foundation, but why it's so catalytic and a system change project is because it takes a holistic perspective at looking at the dairy sector in Nigeria, starting with SMEs that are committed to local sourcing, putting the farmers into clusters and supporting them, linking each other. It's been truly phenomenal seeing how we've been shaping policy, dairy policy, incubating the Dairy Association, putting in place infrastructure projects like milk collection centers, training the farmers, nomadic farmers to settle so they can supply milk, ensuring gender equity, ensuring climate adaptation. So it's a complete holistic process for transforming the dairy sector. And excitingly, in March 2021, Harvard Business School wrote a case study on the Advancing Local Dairy Development because it's so transformative and such a great example of an ecosystem approach that's designed from the onset, that has an M&E component as well as this very strong communications component. So these are 3 examples, and I look forward to engaging with all of you on this great path. And congratulations again to the Africa chapter.
We lost Ndidi.
Yes, but she was rounding up, so I think we can proceed.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll have an opportunity to ask questions, so please note your questions or send them to the chat, and we'll be able to respond to them after the 3 presentations. So we now invite Angela Benson to tell us more about the health sector.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you can all hear me. I'm Angela. I'm talking from Liberia, West Africa. I'm the CEO of Global Health Innovations and Action Foundation.
So anything that I do. Ndidi, could you please mute? Ndidi, please mute.
How have you been?
I'm also Deputy CEO of Benson Hospital, Monrovia, Liberia. I'll be talking to you about system change in the health sector, Africa moving forward. And I'll give you a definition of health and also one or two indicators and examples. By way of definition, as you all know, health as defined by the World Health Organization state that it's a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just absence of disease or infirmity. So for all of us to be productive, first we have to be healthy. And that means in lot. And within Africa, we have many indicators in health, over hundreds. But I just want to zero in on two indicators. That is maternal mortality, as well as child mortality rate. How are we doing in Africa? We have countries that have done so well and are moving forward, and we have countries that are struggling. But where countries like Chad, Liberia, South Sudan started being over 1,000 deaths per 100,000 live births. That is not acceptable. Countries like that have moved downward, and there's a downward trend despite the war, despite Ebola, and despite COVID. How did we do it? And then you have countries like Namibia, Zambia, Rwanda that are moving very rapidly from the middle. They are down to about 250 deaths per 100,000 live births. We all are doing well. Just would like to highlight the work of the Global Health Innovations and Action Foundation in Liberia. They have really worked very hard, one with the strategy of engaging the Ministry of Health
Angela, you're
We've lost
mute. Angela, please unmute yourself. Perfect.
I was saying, hear me now? Okay. I was saying that the Global Innovations and Action Foundation would like to see a world where women in developing countries living longer and living healthier lives through the collaboration with the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Health is able, through the many channels, getting across the entire country, delivering quality and comprehensive health at the point of access, So no matter who you are, you will have access to that comprehensive health package. And that is what Global Health has been able to do as a system change. And within that, many more women are accessing health, and they are not only accessing health, they are able to get products whereby they're not paying by what is they need, but they are assessed and for other diseases like cancer, like diabetes, and things like that, using non-communicable disease to improve the health. Because there are many players in the communicable diseases in Africa, but non-communicable diseases are catching up. So Global Health is trying to use that as a means to strengthen the already existing system. That is the Ministry of Health. The second strategy is using the public-private partnership. The public-private partnership has to do with getting initial capital which we were able to get with the Ministry of Health post-Ebola in 2014, 2015, and that helped to be able to expand health using that partnership and reducing mortality rate with existing known strategies. That is, known strategies, antenatal care, and all of that. And also being able to make sure that we have zero tolerance to maternal mortality rates. And because of that, women were able to have confidence in coming back to health facility post-Ebola because they were so scared they didn't want to come out to any facility because of the scare of Ebola. The third strategy has to do with collaboration across sectors. And that collaboration means that you will collaborate with the Foundation for Women, which is a micro loan scheme, giving loan to market women, giving loan to schools, but now they are giving loan to clinics. And because they are giving loan to clinics, clinics are able to improve their services, their lab work, their pharmaceuticals, and they are seeing more patients, and the record is showing that they are able to see twice as many more patients that they were seeing before. That improved the scale, and they are grouped into a network of excellence. And the network of excellence is such that they monitor themselves, able to deliver on time, and report to the Central Ministry of Health. Well, there are still challenges, but we hope that with the challenges of weak health infrastructure, not enough professionals, poor infrastructure, and all of that, we are tackling it rather than staying and see what needs to be done, but making sure that we increase enrollment with the existing structures and that the existing structure is able to use improved curriculum. And definitely, in conclusion, I hope that what all of us are doing together within the health system is a way of strengthening the existing system and making sure that it's crucial that people are productive and people can develop their own nations. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Angela, for that wonderful presentation. We know that the health sector has been very active, especially now with the COVID-19 crisis and other things that are associated with it. Now, we're going to invite our last presenter on youth unemployment, Sharmi. Please welcome to the floor.
Thank you so much, Wamuyu, and thank you, Angela, for that presentation. I'm going to share my screen very quickly, just to give you a bit of context. So hopefully you can see my screen, but hi everyone, my name is Sharmi Surianarain. I'm really delighted to be part of this group, and it's so inspiring to hear what Angela talked about in Ndidi and Wamuyu in terms of setting the stage for all of this, and Luvuyo in terms of outlining the chapter's goals. To give you a sense of what youth employment is, firstly, I work for Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator. I'm its Chief Impact Officer. And youth unemployment is a challenge that I think affects all of us on many dimensions. It is a truly systemic challenge. And just to give you a flavor for the high level across the continent, we know that the problem is significant. So Africa is projected to have between 10 to 12, some say 15 million that may enter the workforce every single year, but only 3-something million jobs that are created every year. So obviously the challenge is really huge, and we need many solutions to tackle this. And I know that there are many organizations across the continent that are really working on this space, including several Catalyst members. So it's not just about linking young people to jobs. It's not just about training. It's also about new job creation. So I just wanted to give you that overview and factoid in terms of the size of the challenge. But really the goal for me is to focus on just this one slide about Harambee's story, which is about systems change. We are on the beginning of systems change. So just for you, those of you that don't know, Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator is a social enterprise that works out of both South Africa and Rwanda. And our goal is to really solve the youth unemployment challenge in partnership with others. So that's very much a core part of our goal. We started in 2011. And the reason I'm showing you this picture is for us, it helped symbolize what we think of as systems change. So in the very beginning, if you see the far left, and some of you may have seen versions of this graphic in other contexts, but we saw the problem as young people not having access to opportunity. They were either cut out of it by virtue of where they were or the skills they had, or the fact that the labor market just didn't recognize them. And so they just couldn't even see opportunity couldn't see them, and they had significant barriers in terms of accessing jobs. So that was the reality. So there were millions of young women and men across the continent, and particularly in South Africa, which is the highest youth unemployment rate in the world, had no line of sight to opportunities. Harambee was started in 2011 to really focus in on that problem where young people couldn't see opportunities and opportunities couldn't see them. So we broke down this particular challenge by doing two things. One is working with young people to help showcase what they had in terms of potential. So we quite quickly realized that a young matriculant from school had a lot more potential than their maths marks could show. They were actually capable of a lot and could do a lot of entry-level jobs. And on the flip side, employers were looking for years of experience when in fact, they just needed a competent person to do the job at hand. So in the beginning, what we focused on was very much zoning in on that problem, to advocate for employers to be more inclusive, dropping qualifications, looking at CVs more expansively, and really addressing the challenges that young people face in terms of barriers. And then on the flip side with young people, giving them skills training specifically for jobs. So in our language, in the first 10 years of our journey, we were focused on giving thousands of young people a leg up to see and access opportunities, which was great. And I think we've been able to do that quite significantly over the years. So this past year, we've crossed pathwaying 230,000 young people out of a network of over 1 million young people in South Africa, and a network of over nearly 7,000 in Rwanda, and pathwaying over 1,000 into jobs and work experiences. But we still felt like that was not enough. And two or three things I think in our systems change journey that really has materialized for us. One is that we believe that systems change is about removing barriers for all. So it's not just about the young people that are in our network. It's not just about skills training, etc. It's about dismantling those barriers. Now, what do I really mean by that? So I'll give you maybe two examples. One, firstly, in partnership with government, and Angela mentioned this as well with the Ministry of Health in her examples, but we really found that systems change is impossible without the government, especially on the African continent. And we've been fortunate to partner with government at multiple levels, starting with City of Johannesburg, Gauteng provincial government, and now at the national level with the presidency. And similarly with Rwanda as well, working with the Ministry of Youth and the Rwanda Development Board to really address barriers. And again, the specifics are, we partnered, for example, with the Department of Trade and Industry in South Africa to see, okay, we can pathway young people to existing jobs, but no number of jobs that exist can be sufficient for the challenge of youth unemployment. So what if we worked with the Trade and Investment Department to bring new jobs into the country, which is what we did. So we worked with the Department of Trade and Industry. We're doing the same with the Rwanda Development Board to attract investors to come to the country. And in our case, in South Africa, it was the contact center industry. Some of you may know call centers, etc., to bring new jobs, new investors, and then almost incentivize employers to hire young people. So we were very successful with that, especially in South Africa and now in Rwanda, to say, to almost create a roadmap of 500,000 jobs, new jobs that could be created until 2030. And we're so excited that 40,000 of those jobs have already been created in the past few years. Over 80% are young people, over 60% are women. So it's an example we're working with the government at a systemic level to say, not just pathwaying young people, not just advocating for inclusive hiring, not just skills training, can potentially remove barriers for everyone and possibly create jobs for everyone. We're trying to do this in other sectors, and we're really at the starting point in our journey to really figure it out. But that's a great example of how we've been able to do that at a systems level. We don't have all the answers, and we definitely rely on our partners. And I think we're fortunate to have great partnerships with private sector and government. But I'll be honest, and Wamuyu mentioned this in her intro, systems change is very messy. It's very complex. It's very hard to even wrap your hands around. So we are very much at the starting point of this journey. I think it's going to require a lot of change management. We're figuring out which water we are swimming in. We're the fish, and we don't know which water we're swimming in. But all we know is that it's going to take different partners, and we're really looking forward to collaborating with everyone. And the last point I just want to leave you with in terms of my presentation is what we're really excited about, perhaps as the most important aspect, is we think this is an African blueprint to a global challenge. So, you know, for decades, the social enterprise and the development space has been fed the narrative that all of the innovations from the West or the global North has to actually solve Africa's problems. But actually, we think that systems change, especially in complex environments like youth unemployment, can be a blueprint for global challenges. So we fully expect that not just Harambee, but other organizations that have been mentioned and are part of Catalyst can solve global challenges, that these ideas can actually go out and make the world a better place with more inclusion and equity at the heart of things that we do. So with that, I'll end and hand over back to you, Wamuyu. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharmi. That was very inspiring. So I thank the whole team for great presentations in the different areas that we're working. I invite the audience now to ask questions. You can ask a specific question on any of the initiatives that were mentioned, or you could ask a question that is out of what has been discussed, or you could just say hello. So feel free to go whichever way. Just I believe we do have a kindly respond to the poll that's in front of you, even as we think about the questions we have. And I believe if you raise your hand or make some kind of a mark, we'll be able to know if you have a question. Okay, wonderful. So 57 of us, no organizations that are achieving systems change. So that's a good start. So let's now move to the questions, and let's try and prove this going forward. Do we have any questions or comments?
Hi.
Hello, Robin.
Hi, how are you? Sorry, I've done the wrong thing there. I didn't mean to put a thumbs up. I meant to put a hand up, but in any case.
Yes, you made some mark. That's good enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So yeah, it's really wonderful to be connected with other fellow change makers on the continent and off the continent who care about the continent. And wonderful to see Harambee. Huge amount of appreciation and respect for the work that Harambee is doing, and to hear so many fantastic stories about what's happening. And really just wanted to say that I think we're at this incredibly exciting pivot point on our continent and with our youth on the continent, where they are ready to change the narrative. They're not ready, they have changed the narrative. They don't need to comply anymore or to give way to this kind of deficit concept. And so I think whatever we do, that we should really be promoting the positive, the potential, the opportunity, the life that's present and thriving and waiting just under the surface, and creating the frameworks for that to emerge. So, you know, it's not about making it happen. It's not about even allowing it to happen. It's not about facilitating. It's literally about watering the earth of the potential that's there. And creating pathways for real shift and change to happen. It wants to happen for our continent, and I think it's high time that it does. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Robin, for that comment. It really does resonate with us, and it's good that you are very interested in what is happening in Africa, and we're happy to work with different partners who have different ideas, because no continent is a custodian of all good ideas. Thank you. We have a question from, is it Betsy, who's asking whether there are other avenues for collaboration other than the Catalyst 2030? Luvuyo, would you like to respond to that?
We are part of that and part of the chapter, and we're saying that Africa has to have part of the agenda from the global catalyst to extend that part of any engagement has to become in. And the best thing that can happen is just for us to come together, to get involved. And I could say that it's the beginning of many kind of exciting things, because the energy and also with this kind of like amazing social entrepreneurs around that. And I kind of feel that there's not much more platform now in Africa than this kind of Africa chapter that brings all, social entrepreneurs in one aspect now. So at the moment, there's none that is there except that this kind of platform. And I think more than anything, just like to invite any ideas to be part of the movement. And we do meet, quarterly, where we open up so that we could meet and able to share any idea that you want to share.
Thanks. Could I just add as well? So there is actually, there are a couple of platforms, perhaps not necessarily for established social entrepreneurs, but there is a remarkable platform called Ubuntu Lab, which is run by Aggie and Martin Kulungabanda from the Presencing Institute. And it is a platform that's really designed for solutions thinking and for systems change thinking. And they have about 500 members at the moment. And it's a really amazing space for people who care about systems change, but don't necessarily have the tools. And for social entrepreneurs to connect. So specifically for social entrepreneurs who are invested in deep systems approaches. So that might be worth also just connecting with and linking up with.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Caris. She comments that the presentations we have made are not very different from the ones she has had elsewhere or seen elsewhere. And she would like us to clarify the methodology that should I say the systems change methodology? I think that's what she wants to find out. Sharmi, would you like to respond to that?
Sure, thanks, Wamuyu. I think, firstly, I think you're right. In some ways, they're not very different. I think we're all getting used to the systems change game. So I don't think in any ways we are the experts. I think one or two things, however, are forcing us to think differently. So instead of just connecting young people to work and even breaking barriers, etc., for us, it's about thinking of the whole system. So even if you push a little here, what happens elsewhere? So I'll give you another example. Where Harambee, for example, did a lot of work with young people in South Africa and in Rwanda about data costs. So we found that even if we had a great Mobi site, which is a website that's mobile friendly, a lot of young people just didn't have, and it was free. A lot of people didn't have access to cheap data. So they weren't able to actually log onto the site and get access to the opportunities that we were being able to provide for free. So we then made a decision in South Africa to zero rate, which was to really cut the costs entirely, make it free for everyone to log onto our site. But that's not enough. So even if our site was zero rated, what about the other sites? And what about the other barriers that we have to think about? So it's a way of thinking rather than different initiatives. So we won't stop, loading opportunities onto our platform. We won't stop connecting young people to jobs. We won't stop skilling up young people. But it's also about, from a systems level, what are all the blockers that prevent a young person from accessing a job? We're now looking at transport. We're very much looking at childcare, because we saw in South Africa in particular, and globally, the pandemic has shattered young women in particular's ability to re-enter the workforce because daycares were closed. So how do you address that? So we have to think about advocacy and at the systems level. And I have to say, it's hard. It's not really straightforward. And so we're trying to do a lot at once, but we're also trying to do a bit at a time. And I think the difference between a systems approach versus just sort of like a linear approach, perhaps, is really thinking of the full complexity and trying to address it not just within your universe. And the last point I'll make is systems change is not scaling. It's adoption at scale. So it's actually thinking about how, and really fundamentally shifting mindsets, like norms and stereotypes, etc. So it's a lot messier, it's a lot harder. It's both at the root and really adoption at scale. So don't really have the full figured out answer, but that's just a start of where we are.
Carissa, are you happy with that, or would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. It's a clearer explanation than what I understood earlier. It reminds me of what Leila Akaroglu does with the Young School. They have a lot of training in how to think in systems. So it's clearer for me now. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another question? Madalena, is there any other question I haven't seen that on the chat that I may have missed out? Okay, any question on the floor? Please unmute yourself and ask the question, because I may not see your hand. Okay, I think that there's no question at the moment. I wanted to comment about some of the should I say solutions that have come to Africa, born in different regions. And one example I want to give is the solution of empathy. We have heard from many systems change leaders that one of the should I say, one of the very important aspects of what should happen is for people to empathize, for leaders to empathize, for community to empathize, so that they can be able to begin to change the systems, should I say the mental molds and so on. But when you come to Africa, for example, in fact, the whole of Africa, empathy is in our DNA, because the way we socialize as Africans, we empathize as a way of life. We don't need to learn empathy to be able to empathize. So when we get solutions coming from elsewhere saying, you need empathy, then it becomes very confusing for us because we're wondering, is it that we need to relearn empathy in another way other than the way that we know it? Or is it that those asking us to improve our empathy don't understand that empathy is in our DNA? So I'm just giving an example. And this example comes alive when we, as Africans, are not solving our own problems. We are not deciding that this is our brave space, because it needs to be our brave space, because then we wouldn't worry about giving solutions, however poor they may be. Because sometimes I find that having worked with the Shoka Fellows and there are many European solutions, I find that we accept solutions without sometimes questioning. Why aren't we questioning solutions that we are not comfortable with? And I can give you the answer to that, because some of the solutions come with funding. And in Africa, funding is one of the challenges, the greatest challenges of implementation. So when a solution comes with funding, we don't challenge that solution, because we feel like by challenging it, we shall lose the resources. And I from my experience, I can say that that's part of the reason why we're not moving as fast as we should. But as systems leaders, the systems leaders we need to step back and interrogate solutions. In fact, we must co-create all solutions for Africa. And if you look at the solutions that are working, like the ones Sharmi just gave an example of, they're actually homegrown solutions, with homegrown policies changing, with homegrown partners who understand where the shoe pinches the most. So this is just a comment, and I invite comments from the audience. Anybody wants to respond to that or make a further comment? Just unmute and move.
Hi, Wamuyu.
Hi, Esther.
Thank you for that challenge. And I do agree with you that our biggest undoing as Africans is we have over the years accepted funding or solutions to, let me call it, our poverty problem in quotes. And we are not able to raise questions or to ask, does this money that you're bringing us and this solution that you're bringing us really addressing what we need? And I would probably just throw another spanner in the works, whereby I think we also have a challenge of not appreciating what we have or what we know as a people, or not believing that what we have learned, either from our education system or from our experiences, is good enough to be tabled as a solution. So a question, and I'm throwing it back to this platform, and thank you, Wamuyu, for inviting me, is can we start putting on paper or pushing out there solutions that are already working, that are grown by us and are being driven by us, so that we can support our own and see how, for example, we can replicate a Harambee in more countries than just the two in South Africa and Rwanda. Because as I listened to the presentation, I was quite excited. And I like the fact that after testing so many approaches, they are now at the point where they have broken the barriers and they are facing opportunities. So how can we have more Harambee solutions, African grown solutions, that we then can present to those with money and say, this is what we know will work for us, we just need to scale, and this is what we need. So we kind of drive the conversation. So for me, it's really not an answer, it's just throwing spanners in the works and seeing how else can we table all these solutions that are out there that are working, that we can then pick up and drive. Thank you, but I love this conversation and I look forward to joining the Catalyst as a member. I work for E-Mentoring Africa, a not-for-profit organization based in Nairobi. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Yes, Caris, I see your hand up.
Yes, I want to jump in what Esther just talked about. First of all, excuse my English, I'm French. It resonates with me because I'm currently trying to build a database of solution specifically for that purpose, so that African entrepreneurs or social impact makers first, and then it can be global, can access these solutions. And for me, I was focusing on solutions from India or from Latin America. And it is true that all developing countries, even though they are developing, are not really, do not have the same context, do not have the same challenges. And it will be a good place to start to showcase specifically African solutions. So I thank Esther for that intervention. And I have a question for all of you. If we are talking about systems-based approach, there is a very important component of our systems in Africa, that is the government. And it seems to me sometimes that governments, some parts of governments actually work against the interest of the citizens. I'll give an example. My parents are from Cameroon, and in 60 years of existence of that country, there has not been a highway built in the country. They are building a highway. They have been building it for, I think, 20 years. And, so when I see this kind of problem, I start to believe that governments really don't want, the good of the people. So how do you produce a systems-based initiative taking into account hostile elements that are in the government, for instance? that's a question for all of you if you have an answer or experience.
Yes, that's a good question, Caris. In fact, I attended a session yesterday, and we had government officials in that session. I don't know whether we have any in our session today. And a similar question came up, and I can respond what that government official said. They said that they don't want startups. They don't want to be taken solutions that are being tried. They don't want a systems change leader going to a government office and saying, I think I know how to solve this. They're looking at an already tried solution. And what this government official said is that if you go to them with a tried solution that works and says, I'm doing this in a village, it doesn't have to be a big space. I'm doing this in a certain village in north or south or west, and I would like to replicate the same because it works in the other areas. They tend to listen more than if we take solutions on a written document, however well written that document is. So I don't know whether we have other answers, but that's the answer we got in that session yesterday.
I can maybe weigh in because I think our experience is that it's twice as hard in some ways to work with government because it's in some ways there's a lot more, in some cases, bureaucracy. I mean, you've outlined hostility. I don't think it's always that the case, but I mean, I'm always reminded of that quote, if you want to go far, go together. And I think for us, that's the sort of mantra that keeps us going with the government, because to be very honest, no one has the reach that the government does, and no one has the mandate that they do. And it is really, really difficult on some levels, but they do, there's actually really incredible people in government too, that make things run, even though there's perceived hostility on some levels, et cetera. So I think it's finding the foothold where you can get traction and really building relationships. Because I think the perception that government is always kind of not supportive is also, I would say, a little bit unfounded. So I agree with you that there's a lot of problems in some areas of government, but I think there's also pockets of hope. And there are lots of really solid, impressive, inspiring, hardworking, underpaid government people that we kind of need to partner with. And I just personally feel that, finding those people is probably the first step to making inroads in working with government. But it's a long conversation and would be happy to chat offline as well.
Yes. There are other organizations I see here who work with government. Would you like to share your experience with government? I don't want to point names, but I know organizations here that work with government. Would you like to share your experience? Okay, all right. Maybe the experiences are not very good experiences. Angela, do you have something to say? Please unmute yourself. Kindly, and yes, that's right.
Okay, I like to bring the example of a health system working, a health NGO with the government. Always easy to work with government, but when you do find good examples of what works and let them know really that the objective is their own objective, reaching and covering every part of the country and doing it in a way that we work together, collaboratively, not criticizing them or saying they're not doing the right thing, but showing the example. For instance, we can highlight some examples that are good, breastfeeding, your examples of community banking, transport, pregnant women to facility so they can have safe deliveries. Those are examples that comes from them and are working in many of our countries. But when we bring along other examples that have worked where show that it can also work, for instance, in our own country, and also there are many good examples that of what we have done in the past. We are together for the same objective. I think once they see these good examples, most of them will listen as well as see how yes, we can work together, because they actually need the track record that yes, we are all together for them and not against them. Definitely covering the entire country, as a system change, it's not something that one or two NGOs can do. We have to collaborate with them to get far. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela. Our time is up. Actually, sorry, I didn't even realize that we are 2 minutes past the time. Madalena, you didn't remind me, sorry. I'm a stickler for time, so I'm surprised that we have gone past our time. This is a time to say thank you for coming, for spending this time with us. Kindly get in touch with us through the emails that have been sent to you. Feel free to reach directly to Catalyst 2030 Africa chapter, and we'll be able to respond to your question or to partner with you. And we are also, we are happy to share the knowledge that we have and the skills that we have so that we can build more systems leaders in Africa. Thank you very much.